How's it going, everyone? Fawn's Iron here, back with another video. In today's video, we have arguably the greatest rivals in the history of the sport, going head to head. Phil Heath and Greene, both versions from the 2012 Mr. Olympia. Who will prevail in this matchup? Well, let's dive right into it. Starting off with the front double, both of them present tremendous assets in their favor of winning. They each have huge arms, gigantic quads, and crazy conditioning. It's a very tough call for me, but I'd have to go with Kai. His biceps are more eye-catching with those absurd peaks. He's taking up more space with his broader frame up top, and he has the better quad outer sweeps. Moving on to the front lat spread, this is an easy win for Kai, again due to his wider structure up top. There's not a whole lot someone like Phil can do in this pose to improve on it. The only way is to gain more width through the bigger delts, and Phil's delts are already at their development cap for his frame. And this means that the score is 2-0 as it stands right now for Kai. In the third shot, the side chest, this is where Phil starts to pull ahead. Now don't get me wrong, Kai looks absolutely insane in this shot, and if his midsection was in better control, he might even take it. But Phil is just so out of this world. He's so 3D and round. His arms and delts are absolutely insane. They are incredibly thick, and his midsection is perfectly in check and flat. Not to mention, his side leg is ridiculous. Now, this doesn't get mentioned a whole lot, but a lot of people say that from the side, Kai's hamstrings are better and bigger. I don't agree with that. If you look, most of Kai's mass there is his glute. Yeah, he has the bigger glutes, but Phil has the bigger hamstrings, 100%. Kai's hamstrings are also huge, obviously, and almost as conditioned as Phil's in this show. But Phil's hamstring drop and size are better than Kai's. It's just that Kai's glutes are so much bigger that it makes his hamstrings appear bigger, especially from this angle. Moving on to the back double. Both backs are absolutely out of this world, and lower bodies as well. This is the closest shot in this entire comparison, 100%. You know, when I first saw this show, I had Kai winning it, but revisiting it, I do think Phil takes it. Phil's back is thicker. It's not as wide, but for his frame, I think it is wider because Kai has so much more clavicle width on Phil. But if you look at the back, the width difference is minuscule. And I guess you could say, back double bicep. So Kai's bicep peaks, they're more eye-catching, yes, but are we really going to give it to him just because of bicep peaks, especially when Phil's just more complete everywhere? The triceps are better. The forearms are better. Kai's hiding that his forearms are so weak, especially his brachioradialis, because he's twisting his wrists forward. And he has so much bicep peak that he can just do that, which is absolutely insane. But when you look at the lower body, yeah, Kai's glutes are bigger, but even with the striations in Kai's glutes and them being deep and set in, Phil's glutes are just a tier above. I think Phil Heath has the best glutes of all time because, as Mark's Max Muscle says, it's a glute, It's not like an abdominal where you don't want to get them too blocky, and it's not like, let's say, a tricep or, a lat where you really more size is better. You need to find that balance, and I think Phil has that in spades. In the hamstrings, I would actually give it to Kai, but in the calves, I'd give it to Phil. His calves insert lower, and they look thicker from this angle. Overall, though, I think this is a Phil Heath shot. Now, the back lat spread is another great pose for the both of them, especially this year for Kai. But again, Phil has so much more wow factor and 3D pop here. Like I keep saying, he's out of this world. Some may argue that Kai takes this shot because he's wider, but again, that's just a structural advantage. If you're looking at the development and everything else, I think Phil's smoking him, to be quite frank. Kai's quad sweeps from the back are out of this world, obviously. But and this is another thing. A lot of people say that Kai's legs, when he was going head-to-head with Phil, were a lot bigger. And they appear bigger, but they're not. They're about the same size. Phil might even have bigger legs. The main reason that they say that is because the weakest part of Phil's quads, especially at this point in his career, not just his quads, but also his thighs, were his outer sweep. And that was Kai's strongest asset for his lower body, his outer sweep of his quads. Especially from the rear. Just look at how they hang off right where his kneecap is. It's absolutely ridiculous. But you know what Kai's weakest part of his quads were? His adductors. And that's Phil's strongest part of his thighs. I know the adductors aren't a part of the quads, but they go hand in hand. You know what I mean? So from the rear, well, yeah, Kai looks like he has the bigger legs because the adductors aren't clearly visible. But when you turn around to the front, Phil's legs are wider. From side to side, Phil's legs, hell, they might even be wider than Big Rami's. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Phil Heath takes this pose. In the next shot, this shot is an absolute blowout for Phil. Not to say that Kai's bad. In fact, I'd say that this is the best side try he had ever hit up to this point in his career. Especially because he had to come in downsize for this show. But Phil takes everything that Kai is good in this shot, cranks it up to 11, and adds in thicker delts and a tricep that's 3 times the size of Kai's. This is a Phil Heath shot. Getting close to the end here. And while this pose isn't the greatest for either of them, I do think that this is a win for Kai. His abs are better, they're cleaner, and he actually has 6 visible abs versus Phil just having 4. And his quads are better. You know, technically the adductors are not part of the quad, and I do think that if you go quad for quad, Kai's quads are definitely better, especially with those crazy outer sweeps. And his teardrops are also out of this world. Now, Phil looks pretty good as well. You know, his quads are top-notch, and he does have the smaller waist, but again, he has the smaller clavicles, and his lats are flaring out less. So I got to give this to Kai. Now, in the final shot here, I'm sure you guys know who's winning this. It's Phil, obviously. The most muscular for Kai was never really the best shot. Any variation, really. He looked good with the hands on hip. Sometimes he wouldn't. He just didn't have that same pop. And the main reason for that is Kai's weakest body parts were his delts, especially, you know, when he's posing his arms like that, and the lateral head of his tricep. And what are Phil's strongest body parts, arguably? His triceps and his delts. I mean, Phil's just smoking them. We got a different variation right here. And in this one, it's a little closer. This might be the best hands clasp Kai ever hit, but you cannot tell that Kai's clavicles are wider than Phil's here because he's scrunching them together. He's scrunching his arms closer together to try and get more delt pop. Just doesn't look that good. You know, you can have the most development in any body part, and if your insertions and muscle bellies aren't just gifted, you won't be able to truly succeed in every single pose. And obviously Kai's genetics are crazy, you know, some of the best genetics ever for the sport, but I wouldn't say for the most muscular. So this goes to Phil, and that means that the winner is Phil Heath from the 2012 Mr. Olympia. And that does it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed the video, go like and subscribe to see much more of this type of content. And if you have any suggestions for video ideas, leave them in the comments. This is Fonz Iron, signing out.